and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Wednesday, September 25th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Chris Towers. Today on the show, 5 hitters who are finishing the season strong. Got some pitcher questions, taking a closer look at some young hitters we haven't talked about in a while, and much more. Let's jump in.
Is this happening? It is!
All right, Chris, I am going to kick us off here because I want to talk about Michael Harris, who is on fire. I brought him up last week as, where do you think this guy is going to be drafted next year? And basically since then, he has just gone crazy. He has 5 straight multi-hit games and a big one here on Tuesday. You know, pretty much a must-win series here for the Braves going up against the Mets. Michael Harris went 3 for 4 with his 16th home run, 111.5 exit velocity, 422 feet. Last 13 games, he is batting .417 with 7 homers, 16 runs, 13 RBI, 1 steal, 95 mile per hour average exit velocity, crazy barrel rate. Yeah, he's absolutely on fire now. He is leading off the Atlanta Braves lineup. And, you know, I was trying to think, how can Michael Harris get near the top of the Braves lineup in 2025? Because that seems like it would go a long way helping his fantasy value. Like, if Acuna's healthy, I think there's no doubt he's going to lead off. Can they slide Albies down to 5th in the lineup and kind of go Acuna, Harris, Riley, Olsen, Albies? That kind of seems reasonable. Oh, well, they have Ozuna too. I don't know, man. It's tough.
Yeah, it's one. I do just expect the Braves lineup to be better in 2025 than it has been in 2024. Probably unreasonable to expect it to be as good as it was last year when, I don't know, every player had like an 800 OPS in the lineup, but I do think it will be better. And yeah, I think it comes down to Albies and how much faith they have in him bouncing back. And what's worth noting there is it's been a disappointing season for Michael Harris. He's been better now than Albies if you go by OPS. He's right around 730 right now. Albies is still right around 700. That makes 2 of the past 3 seasons where Harris has been the better hitter than Albies. And I might just take Harris moving forward as the better hitter. Albies will be 28 next season. Harris, I believe, he's only like 23, right?
That sounds right. He turns
24. Yeah.
Or in March, yeah.
So, you know, I think you probably, like, they might just defer to the veteran, the offensive, you know, not centerpiece, but one of the offensive centerpieces in Ozzie Albies for most of the last decade, and give him the edge. But I do think there's a legitimate argument and a legitimate chance that Harris could be ahead of Albies. You know, he's less of an ideal number 2 guy because he's not a high OBP guy. But then again, Ozzie Albies doesn't walk a ton. Yeah. So I think you can make a case for it. And I think it really would help because there's a huge difference between batting 6th, 7th, or 8th and batting 2nd in a lineup. You're talking about probably 80 plate appearances over the course of a season, if not more. So that is the one thing that I think Michael Harris would need to do. But I mostly feel okay about just writing this season off and viewing him more or less how I did coming into the season. And the fact that he's closing out the season so strong certainly helps in that regard. So I am not done with my initial run of outfielder rankings. I'm thinking I might have a full position by position rankings ready for next week on the FBT newsletter. I think he's going to be top 15 for me though.
Again, that's Michael Harris, whose ADP was 34.4 entering this season. Lots of hype as we started to get, you know, closer to opening day with Michael Harris. And I wonder what that discount is going to be. I asked you guys last week. I think you said either round 6 or round 7. It'll probably be a little bit higher than that, especially with the strong finish, you know, round 5, round 6. If we get a 2 to 3 round discount based on where he was drafted this year, he's still young enough. He's entering the prime of his career. And you know, as we pointed out, hopefully, if these guys hit to their capability, the top 6 in the Braves lineup is still very formidable with Acuna, Albies, Olsen, Riley, Ozuna, Harris in some order, hoping for a big bounce back next season for the Atlanta Braves. Let's stick with that team. Chris, your player of the night is Spencer Schwellenbach.
Spencer Schwellenbach, who we've talked a lot about in the second half, and for good reason. He went 7 innings, gave up 1 run today against the Mets. Only 4 strikeouts. Strikeouts have been a little up and down lately, but he's just been phenomenal basically since July 1st. He had a 5.68 ERA at the end of June, and since then, let me make sure I have this number right. He has been top 15 among starting pitchers since July 1st, before going 7 innings with 1 earned run and getting a win on Tuesday night. So could potentially be a top 12 starting pitcher since July 1st. And overall, since his debut, he's been a top 28 pitcher, starting pitcher, again, before tonight. And we've talked a lot about the component parts for Spencer Schwellenbach, but I think it's worth highlighting again. 26.3% strikeout rate, good for 27th among 124 pitchers who have thrown at least 100 innings this season. 4.9% walk rate. That was entering Tuesday's start where he only walked 1. That was the 13th best mark among pitchers with at least 100 innings. The only pitchers who have both a higher strikeout rate and a lower walk rate than Spencer Schwellenbach are Logan Gilbert, Joe Ryan, and Tarek Skubal, which is pretty good company to be keeping. I mean, that's 2 top 12 starting pitchers in fantasy. And, I don't think Joe Ryan was going to be top 12, but he wasn't far off before his injury. So you add in the fact that he's got pretty average results on balls in play. And you're talking about a guy who was 18th in xERA. Again, entering tonight's start will likely be even higher than that. And so when you're talking about where to rank Spencer Schwellenbach for 2025, I don't think it's a stretch to say he has top 12 upside. I don't think it's a stretch to say that there is really not that much of a difference in skill between Spencer Schwellenbach and guys like Logan Gilbert or George Kirby, who are going to likely be top 12 starting pitchers for next season in the rankings and in ADP. I think there's even more strikeout upside than he's shown. The curveball and splitter are elite swing and miss pitches. He's 12th, I believe, in swinging strike rate this season at 13.8%. The problem is he's a converted reliever from college who had Tommy John surgery and threw 65 innings last season, his first season in professional ball. He is, if he makes one more start or, they make it to the postseason, almost certainly going to finish with more than 100 innings than he threw last season. Now, the so-called Verducci effect has been overstated. Like, there is no, if you just look at this one thing, it can tell you who's going to get hurt at starting pitcher. That's not how it works. But I think 100 more innings than you've ever thrown in a season is a reasonable red flag. So I think it's okay to downgrade Spencer Schwellenbach, but if you just took what he's done at face value and the fact that he's going to be 25 years old and the fact that he is clearly ascending and has gotten better in the second half, I think you can make a case that he's a top 20 starting pitcher for 2025.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you should rank him that way, and I don't think you'll need to. I think it's reasonable to downgrade him a little bit because of injury red flags. But that's still probably a top 30 starting pitcher, definitely top 36. And the way I'm viewing it, and I wrote about this for the FBT newsletter tomorrow, is top 36-ish. It might be 38th, when I actually go through. It might be 30th, but that range feels right to me.
I think higher, man.
Do you think it's too low?
I think Schwellenbach, I think for all the reasons that you just laid out, like the fantasy baseball industry now is so smart, and we all have access to the same numbers, and the fact that he has 2 amazing whiff pitches, the swinging strike rate is great. He should be pitching for a good team. The K- walk rate is there. Good job on limiting hard contact so far. Like, everything is there for Schwellenbach to be the breakout pitcher in 2025. And I think a lot of people are going to realize that. And what you said about he might not be that different skills wise than someone like Logan Gilbert or George Kirby, who are going to be ranked in the top 12, maybe top 15. You downgrade him a little bit because we haven't seen him do it before. And maybe a little bit of concerns about workload. You downgrade him from there, and he's still kind of ranked as like a top 24, top 25 starting pitcher. And that's, look, I don't know for sure that this is what's going to happen, but my early lean is I think he's probably going to be one of those helium pitchers that's drafted like a fringe SP2, low end SP2, high end SP3 type.
Like Bailey Over entering this season, which we'll get to it later, but hasn't worked out as well as you might have liked. And look, that I think there is something to be said for like this type of pitcher potentially getting overrated. The small sample size, K- walk darlings, like K- walk ratio is a very useful stat. And, I know some very smart people have said, if you could pick just one stat to judge a pitcher by and nothing else, K- walk rate would be the one to go with.
Yeah.
But then you look at like the guys who are ahead of Spencer Schwellenbach, he's 13th. Mostly elite pitchers, but also Nick Pivetta, always a K- walk rate darling.
It is not foolproof for sure.
Yusei Kikuchi, good pitcher.
Yeah.
Not an ace.
Very Nick Pivetta-y. Better than Nick Pivetta, but they have similar warts.
Bailey Ober has had his ups and downs. Tanner Bybee has had his ups and downs. Pablo Lopez. Those guys are all a little bit below Schwellenbach, but in the same range. So it's just to say that, like, I think pushing him into the top 24 is probably going too far, but we'll see. I haven't actually ranked it yet. So like that was just not even eyeballing. I didn't like go through and say, yes, I'd rather have this guy. No, I'd rather have Schwellenbach. Maybe 30th is too low. Maybe I'm not being aggressive enough.
He was part of the 3 pitcher questions I had for later on, and we've talked a lot about him already, but just wanted to point out the strikeout rate in September is down quite a bit, 6.1 K per 9 for Spencer Schwellenbach, and just makes me wonder, A, is that him just kind of wearing down a little bit because of that big innings jump, although the results have still been there, or B, the strikeouts that he got early on, was that a bit of a mirage, and we're kind of seeing some regression here within the season. I don't know the answer to that, but that is just something I wanted to point out for Schwellenbach potentially heading into the offseason and the excitement that will be for him in 2025. Oh my goodness gracious! Just wanted to point out the Padres just ended their game with the Dodgers with a triple play, which
incredible,
is pretty crazy stuff. A 5-4-3 triple play around the horn to end that game there. Oh my goodness gracious! Lineup wanted to give the Giants some shine here, playing spoiler against the Dbacks, who very clearly need to win every game right now. The Giants put up 11 runs on 14 hits, including 5 homers. Elliot Ramos, 4 for 5 with his 22nd home run. Michael Conforto, 1 for 5 with his 20th homer. And Tyler Fitzgerald, 2 for 4 with his 15th home run of the season. Just wanted to take a couple minutes here to look at Ramos and Tyler Fitzgerald. We haven't talked about Ramos in a long time. He got called up and was great right out of the gate. He has taken a step back here in the second half. 229 batting average, 7 homers, 4 steals. Those are okay. 665 OPS. I looked into it. There's nothing under the hood that seems that bad. I don't exactly know why the numbers aren't there. 25% strikeout rate is okay. 90.7 average exit velocity seems fine. 14% barrel rate seems really good. So maybe some bad luck here for Ramos. Everything else, like the quality of contact, the expected stats, they all look really good. I think Ramos is in play as like a, outfielder 3 heading into next season.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some like comps for his skill set, like relatively high strikeout rate, relatively low walk rate.
You know what came to mind? Eloy Jimenez when healthy.
Yeah, I want to say Eloy was probably at his best, at least a bigger standout, both in contact and quality of contact. So, maybe that one, like the one that came to mind, and I don't know if this is, but like Mitch Haniger, when things were going well for him a couple years ago,
I can see that, yeah.
was never a great plate discipline guy, didn't have much speed, hit the ball hard, but didn't have like massive raw power. That might be, and that ended up being a fairly volatile profile, but I think a lot of that was injuries. Now, the thing that Ramos has working against him, really tough home park. And that's just kind of always going to make it tough. We've seen a lot of guys in San Francisco, who we think are very, very good, but just never quite put it all together. And, I think overall it's probably a top 36 outfielder for next year.
Sounds right.
Again, just eyeballing. I haven't finished outfield rankings either, but I think it's a skill set to like, and I think you look at the overall package and the expected stats largely back up the overall production. I think you just take the slump in the second half in stride, and you don't overreact to that. You don't overreact to the hot start, and you just look at it and say, yeah, he's a solid hitter, but probably not a star.
Yeah, if you just look at the expected stats, if he's a 250 hitting, 25 home run, 800 OPS bat, that's probably a third outfielder. And that's, it's not an elite standout player, but it's a very serviceable fantasy outfielder.
And
I mean, that is
could be a 10 steal guy. Lourdes Gurriel, like the good Lourdes Gurriel seasons, he's definitely been like a top 30 outfielder. Obviously, again, a guy who hasn't been as consistent as you'd like, but when he's been at his best, that feels like a decent comp. More strikeouts for Ramos, but that could be one.
Tyler Fitzgerald, by the way, this was his first home run since August 14th. So you and Scott kind of called this. It's not going to last. We knew that. He was, looked like one of the best hitters in baseball for like a month stretch there. But 31 games between homers, Tyler Fitzgerald hit 231 with a 554 OPS, 37% strikeout rate, 0 barrels during that span. And look, I don't want to just completely poo-poo the guy, because when you put it all together, 92 games played this season, he's hit 287 with 15 homers and 17 steals. That's still a really, really good player, especially at that pace. I still don't know what to make of it for next season and beyond, but the fact is he has showed some level of skill, at least in terms of power and speed, in Tyler Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I think the speed is the one thing that feels most projectable for Tyler Fitzgerald looking ahead to 2025. And, he could legitimately be a 30 steal guy if he was an everyday player. I think probably, like, I know he has 15 homers in 92 games. I think the true talent level is probably more like 15-ish homers over a full season. And so, you put that together with, what is it now, a 232 XBA. It's a tough profile to make work. Probably just a middle infielder in a roto league, but as a late round pick, which I think is probably where he ends up, I think Tyler Fitzgerald could be fine, but it also feels like a profile that could just collapse. Like, even as good as he's been this year, I think there's a non-zero chance he's not on the opening day roster next year. Just like it feels like the kind of thing where you could see a 40% strikeout rate in spring training, and they just decide that they can't go with him as their starting shortstop for 2025.
Again, that is Tyler Fitzgerald. The updated playoff picture, by the way, this week is obviously pivotal for many teams, and it's just really fun because it's kind of a sneak peek of the playoffs, and these games are really, really starting to matter. They have mattered, but just there's a microscope on a lot of the games and series going on right now. Congrats to the Astros and Orioles. The Astros clinched the AL West. The Orioles clinched a playoff spot. As for the AL wild card, both the Tigers and Royals won. The Twins and Mariners lost. So the Twins are 2 games behind. The Mariners are 2.5. And for the NL wildcard, the Braves beat the Mets. The Dbacks lost. The Braves are now just half a game behind the Arizona Diamondbacks.
So the Tigers are up to an 87.7% chance of making the playoffs, according to Fangraphs playoff odds.
Crazy.
it's even wilder than you think. On September 15th, 10 days ago, their playoff odds were 9.9%.
Wow. Jumped 80 percentage points.
Yeah, like I was looking at Tarek Skubal because, he could make one more start. And if he did, he would have a chance to pass Chris Sale for the strikeouts. He's actually currently the strikeout leader, but Sale has one more start. Has a chance to lead the majors in ERA, strikeouts, and wins, which hasn't happened since Johan Santana. Chris Sale also has a chance to do it, by the way. He probably isn't going to make another start. There's 5 games left. There's only they're 2 games up now. Like, that's wild. How did we get here? Where like the Tigers might be resting players this weekend.
The best story in the second half, the Detroit Tigers there. Quick reminder to sign up for the FBT newsletter if you haven't already, or stick with it for this off season. Obviously, football is in full swing and basketball is starting up. But if you want to get your fantasy baseball fix throughout the offseason, we'll still be doing 2 podcasts per week. Chris will still be writing the FBT newsletter. So if you are watching, you can scan the QR code on the screen right now, and that will take you to the website where you click on the FBT logo, you punch in your email address, and it's easy as that. You'll get a newsletter delivered right to your inbox for free. Let's take our first break, and when we return, we'll hit the news and notes right after this.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
Welcome back in news and notes. Francisco Lindor remained out of the lineup Tuesday due to that lingering back issue. He's now missed 8 straight. Luis Angel Acuna started in his place, and there is some hope that Lindor could return on Wednesday. The Mets starting to feel the heat a little bit, so maybe even if he's not 100%, they're going to try and get Lindor back in the lineup. Yordan Alvarez was out again Tuesday due to that right knee sprain. Alvarez hopes to get some at-bats this weekend against the Guardians. Austin Riley will not return this season. He underwent a CT scan Monday, which showed that his hand fracture is healing slower than expected. Josh Young was officially placed on the IL with right wrist tendonitis. Max Muncy was back in the lineup after missing Sunday with side soreness. Ronaldo Lopez threw a bullpen on Tuesday and could potentially return before the end of the regular season. He is on the IL with right shoulder inflammation. Gabriel Moreno returned to the lineup after missing Monday with left adductor tightness. Seiya Suzuki was removed due to a sprained right ankle. Michael Busch left Tuesday's game after getting hit by a pitch on his right arm. Matt Wallner was removed due to left oblique tightness. Gavin Stone was transferred to the 60-day IL and will not return this season. He's out with right shoulder inflammation. Ryan Mountcastle was reinstated from the IL. Eloy Jimenez accepted his option to AAA. The Dodgers promoted one of their pitching prospects, Edgardo Enriquez, number 15 prospect, according to MLB Pipeline in the Dodgers organization. He's 22 years old, big season in the minors, 272 ERA, 123 whip, 88 strikeouts over 53 innings. Mostly has pitched out of the bullpen in his minor league career. He struck out 2 in a scoreless inning in his debut. And
Did you see his cutter?
I didn't get to I had it on in the background. I wasn't watching, but I know that he struck out 2 and he was hitting like 101 miles per hour.
Yeah, he was hitting 101. He averaged 99 with his fastball. The cutter, there's a little Brewstar Gratterall there where he just throws fastballs and cutters, but the cutter looked almost like a curveball. At least the one I saw, like it had a ton of drop. It's wild.
Yeah, so he threw 17 pitches, 9 fastballs, 8 cutters. Pretty good spin on the cutter. 25.77 average RPM, and he averaged 99.1 miles per hour on that fastball, as you mentioned. Just a name in deeper dynasty leagues. Like, who's to say he can't work his way into like the Dodgers closer mix in future years? That's they clearly have not had a go-to guy. I know it was like mostly Evan Phillips last year. This year has kind of been a bit of a mess. They have Michael Kopech under contract for next season, but
I mean, who's to say he's not in the rotation next year?
Yeah. So just a name, deeper dynasty leagues, Edgardo Enriquez. The Orioles officially released Craig Kimbrell on Tuesday. Esteury Ruiz underwent right knee arthroscopic surgery. He only got 29 games in with the A's this season. Red Sox prospect Christian Campbell was named Baseball America's Minor League Player of the Year, 22 years old, a 4th-round pick in last year's draft. And this season in the minors hit .330 with 20 homers, 24 steals, a .997 OPS between high A, double A, and triple A. Based on the fact that he made it to AAA at 22 years old, as long as he doesn't fall flat on his face next year, I would guess we see him with the Red Sox at some point in 2025.
Yeah, he had a 179 weighted run created plus over the course of the full season, which was by far the highest of anyone with at least 400 plate appearances, according to The Athletic. Number 2 was 160. So that's a gigantic gap. And it tells you that where he was playing was also, potentially holding his stats back. Yeah, it's been a huge, huge improvement for him. 2020 season, I think. Pretty good plate discipline as well. So, like, Roman Anthony's probably ahead of him, you would have to think. But yeah, they're going to have to make some room pretty early on next year. Campbell plays infield and outfield, right?
I think he
primarily second base.
Played multiple positions, but yeah, I can pull that up real quick.
Yeah, so I don't know if if Vaughn Grissom is really going to get another chance next season. It's been kind of a lost season for him. Obviously, we know Trevor Story has missed a ton of time, so there are going to be opportunities for this big four in Boston with Roman Anthony, arguably the top prospect in baseball, Marcelo Meyer, top 20 guy, Chris Campbell, probably 50 guy overall, if not a little higher. And then Steele, who also made it to AAA. They're, I think, 1st-round pick last year as a catcher. So a lot of fun young names at on the verge in Boston. We'll see if any of them make the opening day roster, but they'll all be factors for 2025 for sure.
Yeah, the Red Sox are coming, man. They have a very good nucleus of young players that are getting ready to make an impact in 2025. Christian Campbell has played all over the place in his minor league career. Second base, third base, shortstop, left field, center field, right field. He's played second base the most, shortstop the second most, and then center field third most. So clearly a great athlete who can play any position up the middle. So
Red Sox are gonna have to make some trades at some point. They got too many guys, and
they still need more pitching. So
yeah, I don't know if
turn some of these hitters into pitching.
I don't know if Cedon Rafael or Brian Abreu are gonna make it through this next wave of top prospects. Willie Abreu, sorry.
Yeah, that can make some sense. Yeah, Willie Abreu for, I don't know, like a SP3 or SP4.
I saw some Red Sox fan tweeted like Marcelo Meyer for Sandy Alcantara, and
it's not crazy.
I think I would do that, but I would hate it.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And the biggest news of all, Chris, John Sterling has come out of retirement to call the rest of the Yankees games this week, as well as their postseason games. So how about that?
I'm not going to make the joke I want to make. It's fine.
Don't do it. Hitters who pick things up in September. We already spoke about Michael Harris. Some other names here. Bryce Harper, 2 for 4 with his 30th home run. In September, he's batting .325 with 4 home runs, 2 steals, .976 OPS. As good as Harper has been this year, it's a little bit weird that his counting stats are down. 84 runs, 87 RBI. It's, we said something similar about Yordan Alvarez like a month ago.
Yeah.
I think those numbers caught up because he's just been red hot.
Well, it's kind of like Jose Ramirez last year.
Yeah. And the Phillies, look, there have been some ups and downs, but they won the NL East. Like, they've had a good lineup all season long.
I think they lead the majors in runs, right? No, they are 4th in the majors in runs.
Yeah, it's like, how does Harper not have more counting stats? Feels a little weird there.
Yeah, it feels like an easy bet on regression for next season positively.
Yeah. Lane Thomas continues his hot September, 1 for 4 with his 15th home run, 3 RBI in September, batting .288 with 7 home runs, 20 RBI, and a .946 OPS. Trevor Story continues to hit since returning, 2 for 5 with 2 doubles, a run, and an RBI. batting .278 with 2 homers, 5 steals, .794 OPS since returning. And Kyle Tucker, 1 for 4 with his 23rd home run. Last 12 games, the dude is back. .381, 4 homers, OPS around 1,200. And the full season pace for Kyle Tucker this year, 49 homers, 23 steals.
And it's been like his best plate discipline season too, right?
He just keeps getting better.
Yeah, and it's weird because he's 17.2% walk rate, more walks than strikeouts for the season.
Wow.
And like he's going to be 28 next season, so you would think this is about as good as he's going to get, except that every single season he seems to get a little bit better at something, if not everything. And so I don't really think the shin injury is something we should be worried about for next season. I guess the general weirdness around the Astros handling of injuries this season, but I don't know. I think he's, if not a first rounder, and I think he should be, he's certainly in the first round discussion.
Yeah, I think he's like a locked in top 8 or 9 pick.
Yeah, and actually in head-to-head points too, which hasn't necessarily been his best format in the past.
Anything you wanted to add on Lane Thomas or Trevor Story, who are finishing strong?
Story, I think it's just more fodder for the late round upside that we've talked about a decent amount lately. Lane Thomas, I can't really figure out. Partially, it's just I don't know what his role is going to be. I don't know what his contract situation is for next season. Looks like he's not a free agent this offseason. So is he going to be an everyday player for Cleveland next season? I don't know. That's the biggest question for me. But yeah, the fact that he has bounced back a little bit lately. Look, he's going to end up with 15 homers, 30 plus steals, pretty bad batting average. I think that's all about what we should expect from him moving forward. And if he is an everyday player, I think it's probably feel better about him as a 4th outfielder in a roto league, but non-zero power, very useful speed, and actually 32 steals, but 14 caught stealing. So that's a stat that when a guy has an unusually low stolen base percentage, it usually goes one of 2 ways, right? They either stop running as much or the stolen base percentage improves the following season. I would bet more on the latter. So there is, I think, 35 steal, maybe 40 steal upside at the high end for Lane Thomas.
Especially with the Guardians. I know a new manager this year in Stephen Vogt, but if I am not mistaken, I believe they have still been pretty aggressive on the base paths this season. I could quickly pull up their team steals.
Yeah, they are 5th in stolen bases.
So that should bode well for Lane Thomas.
Yeah, he has 20 steals in. No, sorry, I was looking at the wrong. Okay, he only has 4 steals in 49 games since getting to Cleveland, so that has not been running much. He has a .279 on base percentage, and like 16 of his 34 hits have either been doubles or home runs. So he might just have had not very many opportunities to run, but that, given how much his value does, I think, hinge on being a plus base stealer, that's a concern.
Yeah. Again, that was Lane Thomas. Let's get into some pitcher questions. We already spoke about Spencer Schwellenbach. Let's talk about Cole Reagans, who turned in another strong start up against the Nationals. 6 shutout innings with 6 strikeouts. He had 11 whiffs on 89 pitches, but the velocity down across the board big time. Fastball down 2 miles per hour, changeup down 2 miles per hour, slider down 2.6 miles per hour. The fastball 93.4 was a season low in terms of miles per hour in this one. I looked to see if maybe it was a little bit colder here, just around the country. It was 66 degrees. I really don't think that's cold enough to matter that much. And we kind of have seen some velocity fluctuations here in the second half. I mean, it just kind of gets the wheels turning, thinking about another player whose innings have jumped a lot from one year to the next, and how might that affect him in 2025?
And there's been a little bit of a drop in effectiveness in the second half, and we've seen his velocity has trailed off over the course of the season. His walk rate has jumped from 7.9 to 9.9% in the second half. His strikeout rate I think it's dropped from like 30 to 29%, 28%. So it's been a couple of points either way. I think it's okay to view these as red flags for him. The big innings jump, the declining velocity as the season's gone on. I think it's okay to view those as red flags. Here's the question. How many starting pitchers in the majors check off both of these boxes? 1, do not have any red flags. Right there, you've got like, I don't know, maybe 19 pitchers total. Maybe like 26. There's guys like Michael Wacha who just like, it doesn't matter. Like Chris Bassett, he doesn't get hurt, but like who cares? So that's one box. You've already taken out most starting pitchers. And then the other box is how many realistically have even comparable upside to what Cole Reagans has shown this season. I think it's probably like 25 as well. How many of them have both of those categories? I can't imagine it's more than 12. So I think Cole Reagans is probably going to be a top 12 starting pitcher for 2025. Like he's going to end up with what, a 3.25 ERA, 220 something strikeouts. That's pretty good.
I think I'll rank him there. It's just a matter of, will you draft him there? Will you be the one to draft Cole Reagans in the third round if it costs that much?
I think that's the question, right? Does it get to, are we going to see a movement away from high-end starting pitchers first? I think that's pretty likely. I would be kind of surprised if any starting pitchers were drafted in the top 15 in ADP in 2025. Maybe
Skubal, yeah.
So like, is that going to have the effect of like, is Cole Reagans SP12, but he goes in the 4th round? That seems pretty easy to stomach.
Yeah.
If it's, 3rd round, it gets a little dicier. So, obviously look, we're going to have at least another start from Cole Reagans, if not multiple. So we'll see how it looks. If he gets blown up and the velocity's still down, that's a little concerning, but he's been really good throughout the season, despite some red flags. So I don't want to overreact.
Yeah. The innings jump for Cole Reagans, 124 and a third total last year, up to 186 and a third this season, which doesn't seem like a huge jump. Jumping up 60 innings is not, I think, crazy by any means. But the fact that he threw 186 and a third innings for the first time, I'm going to assume the first time in his career, just because he's dealt with so many injuries, that, just raises a bit of a red flag. But as you pointed out, I mean, there are just red flags abound when it comes to starting pitchers every single season. Let's talk about Logan Webb, who was back on track with a quality start at the Dbacks, 6 shutout innings with 3 strikeouts, only 9 whiffs on 95 pitches. And he changed up the pitch mix in the start. He threw a cutter 21% of the time. That was only 2% usage entering the start. It was okay. 3 whiffs, 25% whiff rate. It did well on balls in play, but this tells me that he's kind of searching right now, Chris, because that changeup has just been so inconsistent this season. What's been his bread and butter in previous years. I mean, that was part of the reason why, I think he was a top 3 Cy Young finisher last year, is because that changeup was so good. It has regressed mightily this season, and it just kind of feels like Logan Webb is searching, and it worked, at least in this start.
Yeah, I didn't realize that he had been throwing a cutter more in the month of September. Basically didn't throw it before September. And then his usage has been 6%, 6%, 20% in the last start, and then 21% today. It's a super small sample size. Entering today, he had thrown 62 of them total, so I don't know if you can really draw any conclusions about it one way or the other. But in that small sample size, it has been an effective pitch at both generating whiffs and generating weak contact. 79.6 mile per hour average exit velocity, 143 WOBA allowed. So I think it's a positive sign that he's searching, because like you said, this season, the changeup effectiveness has really been hit or miss. There was a stretch in, I think, August or maybe July where it was really, really good again. And then there was but the whiff rate overall, I think, is below 20% or right around 20%.
21.4.
And so if the cutter can be just another effective weapon for him, I don't think it's likely to change Logan Webb's profile. But if it can stabilize him a bit and give him another option when the changeup isn't working, I think that's only a good thing. But I think you look at the overall profile for Logan Webb, and 3.47 ERA, mediocre strikeouts, mediocre for a must-start pitcher whip. That's probably what he is. You're going to get a ton of innings, though. He's one of the more reliable sources of volume at starting pitcher right now. And it all adds up to a guy who you feel good about as your SP3. You can live with as an SP2, but you need to find strikeouts somewhere if that's what it ends up as.
Yeah, it just feels like such an uninspiring SP2 for the season. Like Scott and I brought up Aaron Nola yesterday, like similar uninspiring SP2. Like, would you take Spencer Schwellenbach over either of those guys, like Nola or Logan Webb?
That probably depends on who I took first, right? Or I guess where, like, if we're talking about guys who fall to, like, I don't know, the 7th round range, and you're picking between them, that probably means that I'm chasing upside. And I think Spencer Schwellenbach probably has a little more of that. But like you pointed out, the strikeout rate has fallen off a bit as the season's gone on. His Spencer Schwellenbach's strikeout rate in the limited sample size we saw in the minors, not elite, much less than a strikeout per inning last season. So it is possible that Spencer Schwellenbach is more of a run-of-the-mill strikeout pitcher, in which case, yeah, you'd probably rather have the safety and stability of an Aaron Nola or Logan Webb. So I think I'll rank Nola and Webb ahead of Schwellenbach, but I don't know. They certainly don't have the upside. Like Framber Valdez is another one where I think he's just a better version of Logan Webb right now, but that's a similar one where you're mostly drafting for safety, and that's an iffy decision to make at starting pitcher where basically nobody's actually safe.
Yeah. I remember early on in the season when Tyler Glasnow was crushing it and Cole Reagan's all season long. One of my early season kind of thoughts and takeaways was going to be just draft the highest skilled pitchers next year and do not worry about injury risk, especially when we had, quote unquote, safe guys like Garrett Cole getting hurt in spring training and,
Sandy Alcantara last year. Yeah.
Just being so unpredictable at the position, right? Like just get the most talented pitchers and however much they can give you before they get hurt and just bank those stats for as long as you can. And then just kind of figure it out as you go. I don't know if that's definitely my plan for next year, but it's just kind of an early lean. I was all in on Logan Webb this year, and I've been left underwhelmed as waiting.
He's fine.
SP1 in lots of leagues. It just it didn't really work out the way I thought.
I think it largely depends on cost. I think in an era where pitchers were getting pushed up the last few years, it made more sense to chase an anchor or two for your rotation and like really focus on like stability and projectability and volume. If everyone's going to get pushed down, which I think might happen next year, I do think that there's a case to be made for what you're saying, which is just who cares if your 5th round starting pitcher gets hurt? Not literally, like it obviously is bad if your 5th round starting pitcher gets hurt, but like I think I'm more willing to accept that risk if it's a 3rd round SP1 or a 5th or 6th round SP2 than when it's a 2nd round SP1.
Yeah. I just look at the guys that are going to win Cy Young, right? Skubal and Chris Sale. I mean, we had workload concerns on both of those guys coming into the season. We just Skubal, we haven't seen do it over a full season. And, Chris Sale has been marred by injury for a bunch of years now. So just because they stayed healthy this season doesn't mean it'll be that case again in 2025. But
honestly, you know what the strategy should be?
What's that?
Just draft Zach Wheeler. Like
second round.
Stop worrying about everything else and just draft Zach Wheeler. And just like that's the only starting pitcher you should draft.
Yeah. No one else. You don't even need anything.
Yeah, just the one SP strategy.
All right, let's take our final break. When we return, we'll take a closer look at 4 young hitters. And, 3 of them playing well. Dylan Cruz, I don't know. Let's check back in. We'll do that right after this.
At CBS Sports Galazzo Network, we're bringing you the game. Breaking down the game.
This is unlike anything else in the world.
And changing the game.
Get it all for nil.
That means free.
Whoa.
And all day long.
24/7.
Welcome back in. Let's take a closer look at 4 young hitters. Kyle Manzardo starting to figure things out here. 1 for 3 with a walk and his 5th home run in 20 games since being recalled. He's batting .314, 5 homers, an OPS over 1,000, 23% strikeout rate is solid, 51% fly ball, 46% pull. So doing exactly what we want in terms of power, 14% barrel rate. Not playing every single day. He started just 15 of 22 games since being called up. But I think this develops some confidence, at least for Kyle Manzardo as a late round sleeper heading into 2025.
Absolutely. As a late round sleeper, I think he makes a lot of sense. And I think the question is, will the Guardians view him as an everyday player for 2025? And there's not a lot in his profile that suggests he shouldn't be. Throw in his minor league stats in with his major league stats. He has 21 strikeouts and 108 plate appearances this season. That's below a 20% strikeout rate. Last season, it was 33 in 131 games. That's about a 25% strikeout rate.
Is that only against lefties?
Only against lefties, yes. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
He's hit for a decent amount of power this season against lefties as well. And it's like we talk about all the time. If you're a young left-handed hitter, the biggest thing is just don't be unplayable against lefties. And Kyle Manzardo doesn't look unplayable against lefties. It's just will the Guardians trust him and give him the space that he needs, the opportunity that he needs to play every day? I hope so. I think he's a viable late round sleeper for 2025 now.
Yeah, as a corner infielder, I think that makes some sense for Kyle Manzardo.
I'm writing it down right now. I'm going to probably early on in the offseason do some way too early sleepers, breakouts, and busts. Kyle Manzardo, 1B Guardians, locked in as a sleeper.
Let's go. We haven't heard much about Dylan Cruz lately because he has slowed down. 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts here on Tuesday. He's 1 for 24, over his past 6 games. And overall, he's batting just 196 with a 576 OPS. Plate discipline looks solid. Zone contact is really good. Swinging strike rate. Actually, the plate discipline looks really good for Dylan Cruz so far. The biggest issue is that he has a 61% ground ball rate, and ground balls were not really an issue for him in the minors. So we've seen lots of big name prospects get called up and not be great right away. I think that's part of the calculation here for Dylan Cruz. And I think I would still be pretty excited about him for next year.
Yeah, I think you look at it and it's a 61% zone swing rate. League average is 67%. Probably just not picking the right pitches to swing at. First pitch swing rate, only 21.5%. League average, 30% there. That's one where seems to me like he's on the wrong side of the passive versus patience dichotomy. And look, it's a 22-year-old with very limited minor league experience, less than 150 games total in the minors. Like, that all makes a lot of sense. Everything's probably just moving a little fast for him. But you look at the underlying stuff, and like, he doesn't swing and miss at an alarming rate on pitches in the zone, which is probably the most important thing. He doesn't chase a ton. The quality of contact metrics aren't great, especially, you see the ground ball rate being a problem, but like, he hits the ball pretty hard already. I don't see a ton to be concerned about in the long run with Dylan Cruz. It took him a little while to figure things out in the minors as well, as a professional. And look, maybe it's like less of a can't miss profile than we thought. there were reasons to think that after his minor league debut. And so maybe he's not a guaranteed superstar. Nobody is, but he seemed like a pretty good bet, and maybe he no longer is. I think he's a pretty good bet to be a good player, though.
Yeah. I remember we had the Welsh on last year many times, and I think we got a player comp on Dylan Cruz. I think he said Brian Reynolds, which that makes sense, right? Like, if he doesn't turn into an elite player, but just there probably is more speed available for someone like Dylan Cruz, but maybe just that kind of baseline Brian Reynolds season, 260, 25 homers. Maybe he can tack on like 20 to 25 steals. Better than Brian Reynolds, but just kind of like that baseline talent level for Dylan Cruz.
He's got 9 steals in 26 major league games now, 34 in 126 games overall between the majors and minors. So that's the one thing, is that is there a 40 steal ceiling on a team like Washington that runs as much as they do?
Might be.
Then that makes the bar that he has to clear as a hitter a lot lower, Yeah,
95th percentile sprint speed. Would you be completely shocked if he went like 2040 next season? I don't know.
I think it's within the realm of possibility. Yeah.
Crazy numbers out there right now for Dylan Cruz. Like, obviously he has to, hit enough to stick around in the majors, and maybe even with a questionable batting average, 240, 250, but 20 homers, 30 plus steals. I don't think it's a crazy outcome for Dylan Cruz next season. Colton Cowser destroyed a baseball here on Tuesday. His 23rd home run, 113.6 exit velocity, 432 feet. And it's been an interesting season for Cowser. Had that huge April. He was pretty bad in May and June. He had a huge July, kicked off that second half. And then he's just kind of been so-so in August and September. Since the start of August, batting .237 with 7 home runs and OPS near 750. I don't know what to make of Cowser. Like, he strikes out too much. The underlying plate discipline stuff doesn't look that bad. He does hit the ball extremely hard. Like, looks like he should be a good power hitter, like more than a 23 home run hitter. Who do you think you'll have higher for next season, Colton Cowser or Elliot Ramos?
Gosh, they're the same age.
They feel pretty similar, except Cowser's strikeout rate is higher.
Cowser's strikeout rate's higher. He's in a better lineup. He probably speed is probably pretty similar. Cowser's got better foot speed, but they both have. They're going to end up with a similar stolen base pace, I guess is the way to put it. My gut was to say Cowser, but I wonder if I'm just, kind of defaulting to prospect pedigree there.
Yeah.
The one thing with Cowser is the numbers against lefties aren't great. It's like a low 600 OPS. When you look into the underlying stats, it's still there, right? Like, he has a 346 xWOBA against righties. He has a 298 xWOBA against lefties. The whiff rate is very similar, though. It's actually a 30.3% whiff rate against righties, 30.6 against lefties. That, the quality of contact is significantly worse against lefties, but if he's not swinging and missing that much against lefties, that suggests that it could be an area for rapid improvement for him. So I think Cowser's ceiling's probably a little higher.
Mm-hmm. And I do not want to rule out a young player getting better against lefties, because I've made that mistake in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they do not improve against lefties. That's absolutely sure. But, just 2 names that stand out this season, Gunnar Henderson and CJ Abrams. I had those concerns for both of them, and they both improved massively against lefties. And even someone like Rafael Devers, when he first came up, I remember I was scared of the same thing. It's like, will he hit against lefties? And he's turned out to be serviceable against them. And obviously he's an elite fantasy player. So, not saying Colton Cowser is ever going to get there, but, Cowser had some pretty big prospect pedigree coming into the season, and he's had an okay season. I think one that he can build on heading into next year. Let's wrap up with talking about Mason Wynn, who's had a solid season, 2 for 5 with his 15th home run, 4 RBI. He's hitting 266. He's got 78 runs scored, 11 steals. I just wish he ran more, Chris. 87 sprint speed certainly seems fast enough to run more. The Cardinals, not the most aggressive. They're 21st in steals as a team this season, but Mason Wynn had 43 steals in the minors back in 2022. So I kind of feel like he's capable of at least providing 20 plus steals. It's just a matter of being more aggressive.
This is, I think, one of the most frustrating things about this season, actually, because before Mason Wynn got moved into the leadoff spot, he was hitting in the bottom 4 spots in the lineup, and he had, let's count them up, 13, 36, 42 starts, batting 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th. And he had 7 stolen bases in those 46 starts. That's about a 30 steal pace. Maybe a 25 steal pace, something like that. He started 97 games as the leadoff hitter. He only has 4 steals on 6 attempts in 97 games.
Weird.
Batting leadoff. That's weird because if anything, you would think he would run more as a leadoff hitter. That's usually how it happens. A lot of teams kind of don't let guys run unless they're batting leadoff. And so that is, I think, that's like it would really tie the room together if he was a 25 stolen base guy, because I think Mason Wynn, the 15 home runs, I don't know how much more room there is for growth, but maybe 18, maybe 20 in a peak season. I think his 266 batting average, given the fact that he doesn't strike out very much, seems pretty safe. Maybe even some room to get to like 280 there. And it's just like, but if he's going to steal 7 bases, it doesn't matter. That's not a viable fantasy option.
Yeah.
Unless he, scores 110 runs or something. But like, it's just a very boring profile. It's like JP Crawford or something.
Mm-hmm.
If he steals 30 bases, which I think he's fully capable of, now you start to put him into that like Anthony Volpe, Andres Jimenez group where it's like, these aren't superstars by any means, but they're very good fantasy options, or at least guys that you're starting in most roto leagues. And 105 games at AAA, 17 steals, 86 games at AA, 28 steals. He's certainly capable of being a 30 steal guy. And I hope they let him, because I think that's the pivot point on Mason Wynn's fantasy career.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's wrap up some potential streamers. Chris, you said we were done with waiver wire. Not so fast. What about if you play in daily lineup leagues? Anyone listening, you might be looking at some streamers for this weekend. And Dean Kramer pitched well up against the Yankees. 5 innings, 1 run, 3 strikeouts. He is at the Twins this weekend. Jonathan Cannon, a strong start against the Angels. 6 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts. And he is at the Tigers. Jack Kohanowitz did it again, this time against the White Sox. 7 shutout with 4 strikeouts. Last 8 starts, 2.63 ERA, 1.05 whip. He's home against the Rangers this weekend. And Ryan Feltner has been pitching well. 6 innings, 2 runs, 6 strikeouts here against the Cardinals. The problem, he faces the Dodgers in Coors Field. So I think he's out of the running. I don't know, Chris. Any interest in streaming these names this weekend?
I know Cannon has had stretches this season where he's been pretty decent. I know Jack Kohanowitz is in a stretch where he has been more than decent. You are never going to get me to buy into these guys. Like this is 19 strikeouts in 51 and a third innings for Jack Kohanowitz. I'm sorry. This is not 1992. That would be a bad strikeout rate for 1992. By the way, that's like, I don't know, Christy Mathewson strikeout numbers. Like that is not a viable approach. And I don't know, like maybe he has another good start and it makes me look stupid again, but I cannot co-sign this. If you want to start Jack Kohanowitz or Jonathan Cannon, it's your call. I'm not going to tell you to. And Dean Kramer, the Twins have been really bad offensively lately. So that's probably the best of this group. And look, if you need volume, if you need strikeouts on that last day of the season, I'll go Kramer ahead of Kohanowitz and Jonathan Cannon, certainly.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Some leftovers We will start with pitchers. Tarek Skubal, another gem up against Tampa Bay. 7 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts, 18 whiffs on 103 pitches. He is now up to 22 quality starts. That is tied for second most in baseball. 18 wins are tied for the most in baseball with Chris Sale. Tanner Bybee, a gem up against the Reds. 7 innings, 1 run, 7 strikeouts, 16 whiffs on 88 pitches. Has pitched very well in the month of September. Bowden Francis pitched well. Looked to be limited a bit here against the Red Sox. 5 shutout innings with 4 strikeouts, only through 71 pitches. Last 9 starts for Bowden Francis, 1.53 ERA, .53 whip. Crazy. And Bailey Ober was not at his best at home against the Marlins in a crucial game. 5 innings, 4 runs, 7 strikeouts, 14 whiffs on 89 pitches. I think maybe he was a little bit unlucky. Only 3 hard hits. He had a 500 BABIP against. So maybe a little bit of bad luck there for Bailey Ober. But Chris, anything on him, Bowden Francis, Tanner Bybee, and Tarek Skubal?
Skubal's the best pitcher in baseball. He's the number 1 pitcher for fantasy in 2025. I do not think we need to belabor the point. Tanner Bybee, it hasn't quite been the season that we hoped for. Like, he hasn't taken the step forward. But then you step back and you look at it all, and it's like 3.47 ERA, 112 whip, more than a strikeout per inning. Like, it's pretty good. It's just not like the ace outcome that some were hoping for. And I'm interested to see where he ends up getting drafted next season. Is he a top 24 starting pitcher? That feels high.
Just thinking about it right now, closer to like top 30.
I think he's been in the 30 range for me for most of the season.
I'd feel good about him as my SP3.
I think so, yeah. But it is like, is there a path forward to more? I think
throwing his fastball less, I think maybe that can get him there.
Because he does have several very good swing and miss secondaries, and the fastball's not a bad pitch. It's just all the other pitches feel a little better. But I don't know. It's one of those things where, like, are we judging him against some imagined scenario where he's better? That always is a little unfair. And it like, what he is good.
Yeah.
It's just like, feels like he could be great. And it feels like this is the kind of pitcher that in the past Cleveland has made go from good to great. And it hasn't happened yet. Francis is that's a tough one, because like it certainly feels like there's regression coming. It's just not going to happen this season. And is he a 4.50 ERA pitcher? Is he a 3.60 ERA pitcher? I think anything in that range is possible. And I like the growth that he's shown in the second half since, really focusing on that splitter. I think you're probably talking about a top 200 pick next year. Probably not a lot more than that, though, right? Like, I think there's limited strikeout upside. The splitter, the last couple of starts hasn't really been all that effective for him, and yet he has been effective in spite of it. So I don't know if it's just the threat of that. I don't know, man. He has a 1.53 ERA and a 53 whip over the last 9 starts. There's no analysis of that unless he had a 40% strikeout rate, which he doesn't. It's like half that.
Yeah.
So it's just impossible to really analyze what he's done. He's hit, we'll make the craps analogy again, even though neither of us actually understands crap. He's hit 7s 8 times in a row, or whatever unlikely thing happens in craps. And you can't predict that, but that doesn't mean it's not real in some way.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the opposite for Bailey Ober, where he's just had a run of bad luck across a handful of starts. And if you take those starts away, he looks really good. That's Scott's case for him in his bold prediction as the AL Cy Young next year. It's just also, he has a 3.94 ERA and a 3.80 FIP and a 3.84 xFIP. And he's probably a mid to high 3s ERA guy. with a really good whip and pretty good strikeouts, and there's a lot to like there. I just don't know if I necessarily see the big step forward coming for Bailey Ober.
Yeah, like based on those numbers, it kind of feels like him and Tanner Bybee should be in a similar range, right? And if we're talking about Bybee as like closer to SP30 as your SP3, then, you know,
I think that's probably the right range for Ober.
And Scott's talking about Ober as like a top 15 starting pitcher. So, I mean, look, we're allowed to have disconnects. Scott's allowed to have his opinions, and we're allowed to, you know, disagree. I really like the pitcher that Ober is, and I'm not going to rule out the possibility of him improving and maybe limiting more of those like blow up starts for next season. But, you know, to this point, we haven't really seen that. It's been like a high 3 ERA and a really good whip so far in Bailey Ober's career. And that's probably just what I'm going to trust him to do next year until he shows me otherwise. 2 hitting leftovers. Brandon Lau has homered in back-to-back games. The batting average has plummeted since the start of August. He's batting just .220, and a massive breakout season for Willy Adames. Just had to mention it again. 2 for 4 with a walk and his 20th steal. He's one of 6 players to go 30-20 this season. The other 5 being Ohtani, Gunnar Henderson, Jose Ramirez, Bobby Witt Jr., and Francisco Lindor, all 5 of which are going to be first-round picks or close to first-round picks next season. Willy Adames will not be anywhere close to that. Contract year, we'll see where he winds up. Clearly, I think this is going to turn out to be a career year for him, but figuring out how early is too early to draft Willy Adames will be interesting, I think, for next season.
He had 30 steals in about 720 career games entering this season. He has 20 now in 155.
Yeah.
That feels like the most career or contract year aspect of this, right? Because that's the thing he can control. He can't control that he happened to hit, I don't know, 46 home runs with 2 runners on base or whatever the number was. I think it's like 14 major league record. But yeah, like, you know, who was it? Bryce Harper, the weirdly low RBI totals. Willy Adames is the opposite. Weirdly massive RBI totals. That's not sustainable. I don't know. I think I had him like 7th or 8th in my shortstop rankings, but it's a really deep position. And like picking between him and O'Neal Cruz, I think is going to be really tough for 2025.
Do you think Adames will be worthy of like a top 75 pick next year? Would you be the one making that pick?
Those are different questions. I'm more prepared to answer the first one.
Yeah.
I think I will probably be fading Willy Adames coming off this career year, but it's also possible that everybody else is fading him and I end up being the one who takes him. But top 75 feels a little iffy.
Some bullpen updates for the Royals. Lucas Erceg got the 10th inning with a 1-run lead. The Manfred man on second base. He struck out 2 for his 12th save. For the Orioles, Sir Anthony Dominguez got the final 2 outs for his 11th save. For the Marlins, Jesus Tinoco recorded the final 5 outs for his 3rd save. He did not allow a base runner, and he's looked pretty impressive so far. For the White Sox, somebody named Justin Anderson got the 9th inning with a 1-run lead. He walked 1, but picked up his first save of the season. For the Astros, Josh Hader recorded the final 4 outs, 3 via strikeout for his 34th save. And for the Padres, Robert Suarez got the 9th inning with a 3-run lead. He gave up a run on 3 hits, was in a pickle, had runners on first and second with no outs, and he got a triple play to end the game and picks up his 35th save of the season.
One thing, I don't know if you didn't mention this in the news, but James MacArthur and Hunter Harvey have both been ruled out for the rest of the season, I believe for the postseason.
Wow.
As well, which is not a great sign for KC's bullpen, but should keep Lucas Erceg in the closer's role.
Yeah, for sure. To stream or not to stream on Wednesday, we have Cody Bradford at the Oakland A's, Simeon Woods Richardson facing the Marlins, Edward Cabrera at the Twins. Can you stream anybody against the White Sox? Jose Suarez at the White Sox. DJ Hurst faces the Royals. Zach Littell at the Tigers. Jacob Junis at the Guardians. There's some pretty good ones on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think Bradford at Oakland. I
think Littell
at Detroit, and I don't know, man. I could see either Edward Cabrera or Simeon Woods Richardson having decent games, but I don't love the idea of starting them. So maybe DJ Hers. I think the top two are clear though.
Yeah, I agree with your top two, and then I would probably go Simeon Woods Richardson. I think Jacob Junis at Cleveland could be sneaky as well. On Thursday, we have Aaron Savali at the Pirates. We have Reese Olson up against Tampa Bay. He has been kind of limited since returning. Tyler Anderson at the White Sox, and Kumar Rocker at Oakland, and David Festa versus the Marlins.
I think Tyler Anderson's probably the best choice here. Then Savali, and then I wouldn't be surprised if Rocker or Festa had good starts. It's just I don't want to say trust them because I don't trust either of them, but I could certainly see both having good starts.
Yeah. I would go Tyler Anderson, then probably Festa, and then Savali. Kumar Rocker, I'm excited to watch the start and see how it goes, but he's been pretty limited so far in his first two, and I would probably expect the same here at Oakland. We are going to wrap there for Chris. I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.